I'm Abby Walker, and I will be analyzing the interview I conducted with Ms. Chavis and Ms. Humphrey for Education 2130. The first question I asked was to have them introduce themselves, tell me how long they had been teaching, and the grade level that they teach. Ms. Chavis has been teaching since 2011. She teaches second grade, and she specializes in reading. Ms. Humphrey has been teaching since 1984. So that's 35 years. She teaches high school, college classes. I know she had a degree in special education too, and she also teaches with Coastal Plains Alternative High School, which is a really awesome program that helps kids, go through high school without having to go through the traditional high school schedule, but still helps them get their degree and their diploma. The second question was to ask them what inspired them to be a teacher, and we all have our own inspirations. Like I know I have mine, which was past teachers that helped my classmates that I feel like if they didn't have that teacher, that they just probably honestly wouldn't have graduated. And that's one of the reasons I really want to be a teacher, because I would love to help someone do something they don't think they can do. Like I love to just push people and help them reach their goal that they don't even know they need. Because in education, I believe in education is something that you can use anywhere. It is always useful. No matter what you do in your life, education will always help you, because education is what makes professions today. We wouldn't have doctors, and they both agreed with me on that. They kind of said it before I could, but we all kind of talked about how, Miss Chavis did, how education really makes other professions, like I was saying. Like we wouldn't have doctors, we wouldn't have scientists, we wouldn't have mechanics, we wouldn't have anything if it wasn't for teachers. So teachers to us kind of are the backbones to society and the big jobs, and so I don't know, teachers just kind of make everything. And so they agreed that it's a big deal. Teachers are really making a difference, and they said that that was part of it. Being able to reward kids with knowledge and education is something that you cannot take away from a kid. Once they have their education, they're set, I mean, they can do anything as long as they push. Miss Humphrey and Miss Chavis both said that education was a calling to them. They felt like it was where they're supposed to be, and that's kind of how I feel too. So it was really cool to see that maybe I'm not just a teenager just thinking I'm going into something, but education just kind of feels like a calling. Like I can't wait to help kids and help them graduate and do things they didn't know they could do. Anyway, number 3, teaching. I asked them if they had taken an educational psychology class like I am right now, Education 2130. They both said they did. They couldn't remember much about it, but whenever I said the few topics about it, they both kind of like caught on to it and just gave their own little definition or explained their thoughts on it. And I can explain that later whenever I talk about the question, because they are on their separate questions. Number 4, I asked them if they believe that inclusion classes are beneficial to both disabled and non-disabled children. And this was a question that really meant a lot to me, because my major is special education, so that's who I'll be working with. And I really kind of just wanted to see the take of teachers that don't specialize in special education. But Miss Humphrey does, but she also teaches regular students. And she was the leader of special education in her school before she moved to high school college classes. So I thought it would be really cool to get their take on that. And they both said that education classes are very beneficial to both the students as well as the teachers. They said when you have an inclusion class, you have a co-teacher. And so having a co-teacher is 2 teachers for the students. So not only is it beneficial to the students, but it's also beneficial to the teachers, because they have help. They have someone who can help teach this subject while they're teaching this subject, and it helps the students. I think it was Miss Humphrey that was saying that it also helps students realize that this world is diverse and you will never be a cookie cutter child. And so inclusion classes helps a student learn that we are all the same, but we are also different. So yeah, I thought it was really cool. And Miss Chavis was saying that she has seen inclusion classes being grouped correctly and also grouped wrong. And so I guess I could kind of see that. I would need a little bit more field experience to see what she's saying. The only field experience I've been in was an inclusion class, and I could kind of see how it could be grouped wrong. Kind of just depends on the students. That's what she was saying as well. Sorry. Oh, and she, Miss Humphrey said that when she began teaching, it wasn't as, common as it is now, that usually you would have to, she was the special education teacher, so she would have to take the special education kids out into another room to take their test, while the non-special education students would stay in the classroom. So it always kind of drew an eye of attention. And she said it's a lot different now, because inclusion classes allows all students to stay in the classroom, and they know that they aren't necessarily better than them, they're different. So yeah, question number 5. I asked about if they use direct instruction or constructive teaching, and they both said, Miss Humphrey said that she used both. She began with direct instruction, and then she moved on to constructive teaching, and she said that she wants to tell them what to do so they're not lost, but then she also wants them to be able to think for themselves and learn and develop the skills to know how they're supposed to teach. She says that she doesn't make them take notes unless they don't want to, but she also has some students who, if they don't take notes, they won't remember anything. So Ms. Chavis said that direct instruction is easiest for her, but mainly because of her grade level that she teaches, which is 2nd grade. And so those grade levels, I could see where it would be harder to just let a student go on their own, they haven't developed, she was saying they haven't developed like their critical thinking skills. They don't know how to think for themselves yet. They don't, question number 6, classroom management. Ms. Chavis said that in the 2nd grade, that classroom management was definitely a hard thing to learn for her. It was hard to pick up because it's not the same in every classroom. Like, you will have one class who needs to do this, but then you switch blocks or you switch years or semesters, and you have a class who needs something completely different. And as well as the students vary also. Like she said, some students need more behavioral, attention, and some students don't. So it really just depends. Your classroom management really depends on the kids, on the other teachers, on the whole class itself. She said that some kids may not be able to do things on their own. Like, she was saying that sometimes she likes to use the whole brain, which she was explaining it that it kind of meets the middle brain line to where it makes them think into reality, but it also teaches them. She said she'll say things such as like little catchphrases that'll catch their attention. Like, she used the example when she says flat tire, that means to quiet down, simmer down, calm down. And they kind of just know they need to be quiet because that's what that means, because it makes them think about it, but they're also listening. Miss Humphrey was saying that classroom management was definitely the hardest thing to learn and pick up on, because you can't maintain a managed classroom from the same old kids. And she was saying her daughter McKinley had started teaching, and she went from student teaching middle school, and then she just flew up to high school, and so the kids were just running her over and wouldn't listen to her. And I personally know McKinley, and she's a strong girl, but no matter how your attitude is, you have to adjust your classroom management to the classroom itself and make sure every kid knows not only who's in charge, but how things work, and that they know how they're supposed to act. And so question number 7, group work. I asked her, because we've done a few things of group work in our class as well as I've done in my other classes, and I was thinking about it, and group work like really is a big deal in college because we do a lot of group projects, and it can really kind of help you out because not everyone is having to put they're having to put 100% in, but like if you have a group of 5, there's 500% that needs to be met, and if each person gives 100%, then you know it's completely fulfilled. But as long as you have to give your 100%. And so I asked them about that, and about co-teaching, and like how is the attitude in that in their county, because they're both in the same county. And they both said that co-teaching is extremely common in both, Miss Chavis said the primary school, and Miss Humphrey said the high school. And so Miss Chavis was saying that sometimes they'll swap classes, which is really funny because Miss Humphrey also said that they'd swap classes. Like some days they just need to move around and get moving, and they'll switch classes. Like the teachers who, like the specialty teacher in math, will swap with Miss Chavis or Miss Humphrey in, you know, different settings, and completely like teach their class. And so it not only helps the students get a better idea of the subject because they have a teacher who specializes in that. Like Miss Chavis is a reading teacher, and so if she's teaching math, she can do it, no doubt. But if you have a math teacher who knows how to teach math better than they know how to teach reading or something like that, then it might be beneficial to the students as well as the teachers, because the teachers aren't breaking their back trying to teach a subject that they aren't taught to teach. Number 8, I asked them if they were in favor of in-school suspension and out-of-school suspension for all grade levels, and they both agreed they were. Miss Chavis said they had just gotten in-school suspension in the primary school because it was just a big deal, and they didn't think kids that age group should be in school suspension, ISS. But they both agreed that all grade levels should have to do that. Miss Chavis also said that it kind of taught them responsibility, and it gives the classroom a whole timeout from that behavior. So like if a kid has been disrespectful or acting up or something like that, she can send him to ISS, and then the whole class can suffer as a timeout from that student which had that behavior. So not only can it help the class because they can learn, but it also can help the student to learn that they don't need to act like that, or they won't be able to, you know, learn with the class. They'll have to learn separately, or, you know, or worse. Miss Humphrey said that she uses ISS a little bit different. She uses it as if you miss school or like an excessive amount of days, then she'll use it as a responsibility thing. So not only will you be responsible for the classwork you do that day, your class does that day while you're in ISS, but as well as the class work they did while you weren't there. So she'll send you to ISS so you can catch up on your previous work that was due as well as what you're doing right now. So you have to stay caught up with what you're doing as well as stuff that's already been done. So which I thought that was really cool. I've never known of a teacher who would do that. Number 9, I asked him how important critical thinking and creativity was, and Miss Humphrey said that it was extremely important to her. She really talked about how she teaches some, she said, boring things. Like she said Hamlet might not be the most interesting story, but she does it in a way to where they have to think about it. She said that she makes them do, when they read Hamlet, she used metacognition to make them think, you know, teaching them how to think for themselves, and or making them think about thinking. And she said that when they read Hamlet, afterwards, at the end of the unit, she had them create their own Hamlet, but with modern day. So she called it the modern day Hamlet. And so it made them put it all together and think about what was going on. She said she also did that with Animal Farm, and she had them create this whole campaign for one of the animals that they thought would be best for, you know, top. Which I thought that was really cool. I did that in high school, and we never did that, but I thought that was an awesome idea. And like I was saying, she also mentioned metacognition, which was really cool because we just learned about that. And so to see how she used it in real life was pretty cool. And number 10 was I asked them their best advice they could give to someone going into the education field. And Miss Humphrey, she said to just be yourself. And we talked about it afterwards, and she was like, I know it was the cheesiest thing, but it's true. You know, always be yourself. She said that no matter if you have people looking at you funny, or she told a story about how one time she was on the floor with her students, and they were all reading something. I think she said she was in younger grades. She said they were reading something from other students, other poems that another student had wrote. And she said that her supervisor had walked in, and he was just like, "What are y'all doing?" And she said, "We're learning how to read." And she said at the end of the year, that year, she had students be 2 grade levels higher than they started, which was phenomenal. I mean, that's crazy. And so she said, no matter what people think of you, always be you, especially if it works. If what you want to do works, always, always, always do it, because there's no reason in changing something if it works, you know. Don't fix it if it's not broken. Miss Chavis said that she said, never listen to other people, and which I thought that was so funny to hear, because anytime you ask a teacher today, you know, what advice do you have, they always mess around. They say run, or is there anything else you want to do, or something, you know, silly like that. And I've always thought that was really funny, because if you ask another person, like any other profession, you know, they always just say, oh, do this or this or this, you know, just give real, like, advice. But usually if you ask a teacher, they just say run, which was really funny, because, you know, that's always what I've heard. And so she said, never listen to what anyone says. If they tell you you're good, you know, you're doing a good job, listen, but don't take it, you know, too far. Like, don't take anything anyone says to heart. If what you're doing is working, keep going. And she said, no matter if you have someone looking at you, another teacher looking at you, and they say, what are you doing? Then you should keep doing what you're doing, especially if it works. Just tell them, you know, like, I'm teaching. My kids are learning to read. My kids are learning math. My kids are learning, you know, the states. My kids are anything that they're learning. And it doesn't matter how they're learning it, as long as they're learning it. If it's a way you made up, or a way the book says. And she just said to always listen to yourself and never listen to anyone else. If what you're doing is working, stick to yourself. And I really, really respected that advice. I can honestly say I've never been given good advice from a teacher. It's always about wanting to be a teacher, obviously. I mean, teachers give me advice all the time, you know, about life and just, you know, little life things, but, you know, all your friends do. And, but they never actually give you advice on what you should do if you were a teacher. And the fact that they gave real advice and were straight up with me was pretty awesome. And this video interview has been one of the most eye-opening experiences, because it kind of made you learn, you know, from a first-hand experience. And knowing these 2 ladies personally was really cool, because I also got to see their professional side and how they view teaching. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. So yeah, thank you for watching. Bye.